Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this session on optimizing costs. I'm Mel Wilcock, and one of the Microsoft Commercial and Licensing Specialists here at Bytes. I'm also going to be joined by my colleague Maria, who is our Services and Business and Development Manager. Just to let you know, this call is being recorded. Should you require a copy of the recording, they will be sent out tomorrow and available to you. So a brief agenda for this session. So I will be covering the Azure hybrid benefit and Azure reservations, at which point I will pass over to Maria, who will provide a demo on Quantum for Azure and give some more details around our Cloud Essentials service and how both of those can help you looking at optimizing your costs in Azure. What we will do at the end is we will take any questions at the end. So if you do have any questions, please do wait till the end and we'll be happy to answer those for you. So if we look at Azure Hybrid Benefit, what is Azure Hybrid Benefit? So Azure Hybrid Benefit is a software assurance benefit for Windows Server and SQL Server, and it allows customers such as yourselves to use your existing on-premise license investment when you move workloads to Azure. When using the Azure Hybrid Benefit for Windows Server, you can expect to save up to 40% of the pay-as-you-go price when you're licensing your virtual machines in Azure. And how does it work? And how is it calculated for Windows Server? So in Azure, both Windows Server Standard and Data Center editions receive up to 2 VMs per license. So for every 16 core license of Windows Server Data Center you purchase, you can license up to 2 virtual machines of up to 16 cores, or you could license one 16-core VM or 2 8-core VMs. What we generally tend to do is kind of work in numbers of 8 if you're looking to move it over. With Windows Server Data Center, it allows you to run virtual machines both on premises and in Azure using those licenses. And with Windows Server Standard, the rules are the same as Windows Server Data Center in terms of what they allow and quantities. However, you can only run them on premises or in Azure, unless it is for a migration, at which point you'll be able to run it simultaneously on premises and in Azure for a period of 180 days. At the end of that 180 days, licenses will be deemed as assigned to Azure. So if you haven't moved everything over in that time, you will need to then license your on-premise server again. If you are licensing a virtual machine with Windows Server using the Azure Hybrid Benefit, it's predominantly done on a trust basis, as with a lot of Microsoft licensing. And when you set up your virtual machines in the Azure admin portal, there is an option that you have to tick to show that you're using the Azure Hybrid Benefit. So there's not any other evidence that you have to put in there. You just have to be aware that if Microsoft do audit you, then you do have the licenses to cover that. But apart from that, all you need to do is tick that box to say you're using the Azure Hybrid Benefit, and Microsoft will essentially assume that you have the licenses to cover it. So Azure Hybrid Benefit is also available for SQL Server. And again, it can significantly reduce the cost of running SQL, either infrastructure as a service or platform as a service. So you can use it on VMs alone, but you could also use it on SQL databases, etc. Now, when looking at the Azure Hybrid Benefit for SQL Server, it's only available for SQL Server core licenses, not the per server license. So if you have that, it can't be used, particularly under the Azure Hybrid Benefit. And customers such as yourselves can use your cores on premises or as vCores in Azure. And again, it comes with that simultaneous use on premise and in Azure for 180 days to allow for migration. The same rules apply for that. So if you are 180 days in and you haven't migrated everything over, then Microsoft will deem that those licenses are being used in Azure solely, and you will need to license your on-premise estate. There is some documentation available. So in the product terms, if you're au fait with those, there are some details around the ratios of licenses to, say, VMs, etc. So if you have SQL Server Enterprise per core, you can use one core license for one vCPU for a SQL Server Enterprise virtual machine. If you had SQL Server Enterprise and you wanted to license a SQL Server Standard virtual machine, one core license would cover 4 vCPUs. And then it kind of flips around the other way for SQL Server Standard. There is still the minimums that you would have to reach, which is for a minimum of 4 core licenses per virtual machine. But that is something that Bytes can help you with if you're unsure. So just having a look at some of the savings that you could make from using the Azure Hybrid benefit. So on the left-hand side, there is an estimated cost of a virtual machine running in Azure with SQL Server Enterprise and Windows Server being consumed via pay-as-you-go. That is not using the Azure Hybrid benefit at all. Then, as we move across, we can see that by using the Azure Hybrid benefit for Windows Server only, it does reduce the cost by a small amount. But then when utilising Azure Hybrid benefit for SQL Server Enterprise and Windows Server, you're only paying for the compute cost. And in that context, you could save up to 85% if you use the Azure Hybrid benefit for both Windows Server and SQL Server. As Azure Hybrid benefit is a software assurance benefit, you still need to make sure that you have active software assurance on those licenses. And of course, there would be a cost associated with that. So bear that in mind. There are cost savings to be made. And generally, it is cheaper to use your Azure Hybrid benefit, but you still have to keep that active software assurance going. And therefore, there is a cost associated with that to do so. But it is less than purchasing the pay-as-you-go rate. There are, if we look at Azure reservations now, so Azure reservations are available for multiple products. So they are available for products such as virtual machines, blob storage, managed disks, and SQL databases. They can help by providing you with a discount, but you have to make some decisions at the point of purchase for workloads, for anything that, for any kind of consistent resources. So anything you are going to be using the majority of the time, you can put a reservation on, which could then provide a discount for you. So if we take a look at Azure Virtual Machine Reserved Instances, so what are they? They are a way to purchase compute at a discounted rate when opting to pay for it upfront. There are some decisions that you need to make at the time of purchase, and they are how long you want to commit for. So there are 2 options. You can either commit for 1 or for 3 years. You also need to know what type of virtual machine you want to add your reserved instance onto. So you just need to provide the instance and then go. We can move forward with that. You'd also need to know which region you need to have the reserved instance in. So where does your VM sit? And you need to know whether you want it at company or department level. So we have had a look at the Azure Hybrid benefit for Windows, but now if we look at the cost savings that can be made when we use those alongside virtual machine reserved instances. So you can see from this diagram, there's this pile of coins, and they highlight the cost for pay-as-you-go compute and Windows Server. So that's paying for everything pay-as-you-go in Azure. By using reserved instances for the compute, but paying for Windows Server licenses pay-as-you-go, you could save up to 72% of the cost. When combining the reserved instances and Azure Hybrid benefit, you could save up to 82% of the reserved instance cost. Sorry, the pay-as-you-go cost. You can still purchase on-premises Windows Server licenses to use solely in Azure under Azure Hybrid benefit. Again, as I said, as long as you have software assurance on it. And it may be cheaper to purchase this way rather than via pay-as-you-go. But this is where our quantum tool that Maria is going to demo shortly can help a bit later on. So the savings do vary based on the virtual machine family that are being purchased, and not all virtual machine families, so as an example, the A family and the G family, they don't allow for reserved instances. So it might be, if you can't see a reserved instance available for a certain product, it might be that VM family does not allow for reserved instances. If they're not available, you'd have to pay the full pay-as-you-go price. So you can calculate an estimated cost for a reserved instance on the Azure calculator. So if you're not aware of the Azure calculator, it's available to everybody. And what you can do is you can go in and spec up your virtual machines, as in how you like, whether you want to include Windows or not, whether you want to include SQL. And then there's some buttons at the bottom circled in red where you can select whether you want to get a cost for pay-as-you-go, or whether you want it for the 1 year or 3 year reserved instance. You can also tick the Azure hybrid benefit box, and that then knows that to take out the Windows option, and then therefore that will give you an estimated price of the compute for the virtual machine with, say, a 1 year reserved instance and using Azure hybrid benefit. So it takes out those costs. So if you opt to purchase reserved instances, it does still allow for flexibility. So for example, you can reassign reserved instances if they need to be aligned to a different department or the whole company. You can exchange reserved instances for a reserved instance of the same or higher value, as long as the one you no longer need. And you can also cancel RIs at any time. Bearing in mind, for the cancellation, it does say here that there's a cancellation fee deducted. Microsoft, as far as we have seen, has never charged for the cancellation fee. So they aren't charging at the moment. It does say on their website that they aren't charging the cancellation fee at the moment. There's also a limit of around, I think it's £34,000 per year. That's the total value you can cancel up to. You can't go over that. When assigning reserved instances in an enterprise or enterprise subscription or server and cloud enrollment, reserved instances can be assigned at enrollment level or at subscription level. This can be changed if required, but note that reserved instances cannot be transferred from one agreement to another. In order to do that, the reserved instance would need to be cancelled or repurchased under another agreement. So how does an exchange work? So RIs can be exchanged for another reserved instance at any time. The time remaining will serve as a credit applied to the new RI purchase, and the new RI purchase must be of equal or greater value than the prorated amount, and the new RI purchase will start a new 1 or 3 year term. So if you're 6 or 8 months in here to a term, it will start a new 1 or 3 year term when you exchange. It won't just go on for the remaining months of the 1 year term. An RI can be cancelled at any time during the term. The prorated refund will be provided back to the original purchase instrument, so whether that's an enterprise agreement or a CSP agreement. As I said, Microsoft do not currently charge their termination fee, and there is that cap on the amount of cancellations that you can make in a year. So as a recap, here are some of the characteristics of a reservation. So they are purchased for either a 1 or a 3 year term. Payment is upfront or a monthly payment. It can be assigned to a single subscription or shared across all subscriptions. Once purchased, it will be applied automatically to the existing resource. So what it will do is you'll purchase the RI, and then it will find that resource that's the same size, region, and then automatically apply itself to that. It can be used across a service or family. Exchanges and cancellations are available, and they can be purchased via CSP, an enterprise agreement or server and cloud environment, or WebDirect. There's also reserved instance size flexibility. So with a reserved virtual machine instance that's optimized for instance size flexibility, the reservation you buy can apply to the virtual machine sizes in the same instance size flexibility group. So for example, if you buy a reservation for a VM size that's listed in the DSV2 series, like a standard DS3 V2, the reservation discount can apply to the other sizes that are listed in that same instance size flexibility group. Within the instance size flexibility group, the number of VMs the reservation discount applies to depends on the VM size that you pick when you buy the reservation. It also depends on the sizes of the VMs that you have running. I'm now going to pass over to Maria for a demo of our Quantum for Azure tool and a brief overview of our Cloud Essentials.
Perfect. Thank you, Mel. Right, as Mel introduced there, so I'm Maria Singleton. I work within the services team at Bytes, and my role is around the sort of spend and commercial optimization services that we provide to customers. And so what I'll go through today is really just an overview of some of the services we align, some of the challenge statements as well, and what we're finding with customers in the market currently. And then I'll go through a brief demo of Quantum for Azure. So many of the conversations, and I'm sure this will resonate with the audience that we have here today as well, over the last number of years, particularly due to the kind of global pandemic, many of our customers have migrated into cloud, and that brings with it a number of additional capabilities, agility within your IT infrastructure. I think we all saw the fact that all of our users who were now working from home required a kind of desktop look and feel, so we were able to provision applications to them. But equally, talking about Azure infrastructures, we were also able to leverage some of the kind of speed of development that it provided us as part of that. And it meant that customers are able to take advantage of the agility that comes with that, be very flexible in terms of the way that they provide and provision resources to kind of either projects or departments to improve capacity, and also automating some of those elements as well to enable them to react very quickly to any peaks in demand. And that has meant that over these last 2 years, we've effectively been able to operate in a slightly different way, but leveraging cloud technologies to do so. To the extent that, just looking at some of the stats there, from a Gartner global prediction, they reckon that $360 billion worth of spend by the end of 2022. So the challenges that brings are around management of those resources and the procurement of those resources as well. How do we manage those? How do we cross-charge them? And we also have additional issues in terms of how do we get visibility of what is being spent where? So a constant kind of theme that resonates with most customers is that in terms of the cloud budget, they tend to overshoot those budgets. And looking again at the Gartner stats, 80% of organizations will overshoot their cloud budget, and of the spend that they have within cloud, 30% is underutilized. So we can see that there is a significant kind of gap in actually how we are now able to provision resources and compute to our working environment, to our user community, to projects, to infrastructures. But what we are lacking is that visibility and ability to then rein that in and use better mechanisms by which we can optimize those environments. So managing budgets versus your consumption becomes quite problematic. Join and move a lever activities become quite problematic, whereas historically on-prem we would be able to manage levers, mailboxes within a centralized infrastructure, but using things like 365, it means that we now have to maintain certain subscriptions. But equally, that process by which we are automating some of the provision of additional resource to accommodate peaks in demand, that is also having an impact on our cloud spend. And what we're finding from customers is that they need to have some sort of mechanism by which they can then measure that. Looking at the traditional SAM tool sets, the last Gartner Magic Quadrant was in, this was discontinued in 2021, so the focus of that has changed slightly. But if we looked at traditional SAM tools, there was a note at that point in time to say that whilst these, were market leaders, so we're looking at the top right-hand segment there, there was a significant challenge around the visibility around cloud consumption, and these tool sets were only just beginning to address some of those. And likewise, we've had a very similar sort of kind of exposure, having worked with numerous customers, and that's where our quantum tool set comes in. So it sits as the platform level for our Cloud Essentials service, and then we have built a number of services on top of Quantum. We have an Azure flavor and a 365 flavor. I'll go through the Azure flavor in a minute. And then we have a number of services that help customers navigate through some of the complexities around, if I look at, for instance, the commercial optimization, they would help you navigate through the complexities for things like reserved instance and hybrid benefit. And I know Mel has done a sterling job to present to you the licensing rules and the considerations as part of that, but actually taking and understanding that information and then translating it into how that works within your infrastructure is a slightly different model and a slightly different consideration. So we do have services that can help support you around those, and the foundation level is Quantum for Azure if we're talking about the Azure environment and Azure spends. So Quantum Azure has a number of USPs. I guess the first one is obviously it's role-based access. We can deal with single tenants or multiple tenants, and we also can restrict or expand the view that a user can get based on their role. It has AI tagging capabilities. I think Microsoft's official term is secondary level tagging. So this is over and above what you might have in terms of your Azure infrastructure. And why would we want to include those? Well, what we've found over the last number of years is that whilst some organizations have a very defined and organized AI tagging strategy, what often has happened is that it's kind of developed in the same way that historically an AD infrastructure has, and it's become it's created to help those technologists manage those environments. And so then when we're adding a layer of financial management into our portfolio or our Azure spend, it becomes quite difficult. The AI tagging capability within Quantum allows you to group either subscriptions or resources or VMs into defined areas, which means that I can then provide different views without affecting any of the Azure tags that we might have, but they provide views to stakeholders who might have more of a financial or cost management head on them. It allows us to do things like forecasting within there as well, and dynamic reporting, dynamic alerting as well. So for instance, if I set up an AI tag for a project, I have a discrete number of or a defined number of VMs or subscriptions or resources. I create a project name for that, and I'm starting to manage that as part of my view within Quantum. If I want to then be alerted, or any of the stakeholders who are responsible for that cost center or that project, if I want them to be alerted when it reaches a certain tolerance level within spend, an automated alert will be sent to either that user or a shared mailbox to provide us alerts on whether or not a spend has been exceeded. It's also got a number of planning tools in there as well, and governance security modules as well. How does it work? So basically, we create reader accounts to each of your Azure subscriptions, and it then runs through sort of Power BI data visualization tool set, and it provides us then with rule-based recommendations on spend optimization. So those areas where Mel described around eligible instances for reserved instance. So for instance, we said that the A level machines are not eligible. It would present to us within the recommendations tab any of the machines that we have, or the compute sizes that are eligible for reserved instance to be applied to them. Likewise, it will give you visibility of any of your Windows servers within the estate that are eligible for hybrid benefit, and flag any of those that already have hybrid benefit assigned, so you can make and understand any of your decision points around how you might want to apply either reserved instance or hybrid benefit. It does provide some additional technical optimization opportunities as well to customers, and I'll go into those in a second. So if you bear with me, I'll just bring the demo site over. Right, so this is Quantum for Azure. As you can see on the left-hand side, it gives me a list of menu items which are effectively access to reports, and it's this area that is role-based, so I can provide access to all of this menu or just a smaller subset. I have to say anything from sort of the 365 element down are different tool sets. I'm just going to go into the Azure today. But obviously, if that is an area of interest to you at a later point, please reach out and we can sort out a demo for one of those as well. So if I just keep that out, hold on. So looking at the overview page initially, it will provide me with various stats and views of my consumption from the moment I've actually onboarded onto the Quantum platform itself. So we can see here I've got several months of consumption. I can see what my total spend is within those environments. I can see what my top 5 consuming subscriptions are. And I can also see by meter category as well. So it gives me a good idea of, where is my overall spend. So I've got a predominantly here in virtual machines, but we can also see I've got application gateway, storage, and so on. So it starts to give me some quick views on what my infrastructure looks like. Just a couple of things to note in here as well. We've got Azure Tags available in here. So if I wanted to look at one or many of these and see the data only by those specific tagged areas within my Azure estate, I can do that. So I can click on one or multiple. And likewise, if we have created those AI tags, as I mentioned, it might be a slightly different view, which might be via line of business or whatever. I can click on one or many of these attributes to refine the data so it's more meaningful to me. I've also got the ability to filter by meter category and subscription names as well. Within this main overview, it also gives me views of subscriptions, resource groups, geography. So we mentioned about when you're actually setting up a reserved instance, you might need to know, what regions you're actually applying that to. But likewise, any of the resources that you spin up within Azure, you'd need to define where your geography is. For some organizations, it's quite critical that they don't have this kind of data sovereignty requirements, and then to monitor where you're actually consuming those resources is quite important, so we can get some visibility of that as well. Resource costs, so we can keep a track on various report costs and resource costs here. And various Azure tags as well. So if I want to see a list of all the Azure tags that I have within my estate, I can get visibility of those as well. And the various spends of those Azure's tags as well, through to the tag value, resource groups, resource names, and so on. So I can go down to some quite detailed metadata within here and within the tool set as well. If I wanted to, I can export the underlying data into an Excel spreadsheet if I'm more comfortable kind of reviewing that data within there. So that's the overview tab. I should also note that it comes in kind of 2 formats. So what we're looking at the moment is the Power BI dashboards, but we also have a UI interface within here as well. And it's probably easier for me to show you that concept of the AI tags within here. So if I, for instance, created a tag of system type, so this will be user acceptance testing, QA, production, and so on, it allows me then to view the data and my spend more specifically and compare that against previous months for those particular segments of my estate, and I can review the kind of what that is actually made up of on the right hand side as well. So that's the kind of UI. In most cases, there will be one or the other, or a combination of 2. So from an overview perspective, I've now got a view of my spend over time. If I want to then look at some more detailed information to do with more current months and my more current periods around my spend, for instance, I've received an invoice and I want to just double check and verify the consumption against from the invoice against what I can see in Azure. and give it a second to refresh. I can do that within the Financial Managements tab within Quantum. It just takes a few seconds to refresh. So we can see within here, if I want to look at my billing data, it will then provide me with the options to, firstly, it's giving me my monthly summaries in here and the cost comparison against previous months. And if I want to look at the summary of those and sliding scales or dates, so for instance, I've received an invoice and I want to check on particular date ranges about what the component meter categories and the consumption were of those, I can do that quite easily within Quantum Azure. Equally, I have a view of my running costs, and if I wanted to check a particular peak in consumption, I would just click on the button and it will refresh the data to show me what that specific day consumption was made up of. So it gives me all of the underlying information to hand. And again, if I wanted to export that data, I can do that into Excel quite easily. There's a couple of additional bits on here as well. If I wanted to do some forecasting against the previous spend, I can do that within Quantum. It is just refreshing. So it gives me a couple of trend profiles here. This is the kind of seasonality. So this is peaks and troughs over a longer period of time. And here is the sort of trends over more current periods. But if I wanted then also to look at a projected model where we've got an uplift applied to those infrastructures, I can do that within Quantum as well by adding in 10%. And it will show me, based on the previous trends, what that would mean to me in terms of overall costs if we start to increase by 10%. So it gives me a little bit of a view of how we're doing and how that would look from a kind of future projection. So Quantum also gives me, I mentioned all about the AI tags. I'll just cover this one off first before I move on. But we talked also about those AI tags where we've got a view of the spend within, I mentioned about the system names, if you want to have it user acceptance testing, QA, and so on. We can also have this by cost centers, or it could be line of business, for instance. And so it provides me with a different view for multiple stakeholders that will bring the information to light in terms of costs associated to specific groupings of the resources, machines, or subscriptions we have within Azure. The recommendations tab provides me with rule-driven recommendations around opportunities to make cost savings within my infrastructure, predominantly around those vehicles that Mel described earlier, so reserved instance and hybrid benefits. So they are obviously kind of the low-hanging fruit, but also it provides us with information around possible idle services. So if we're looking at VM or services that could be deallocated or scaled down, likewise storage, a database, and so on. And I can click through to these, if I look at the VMs within here, and it will give me the detail of the machines, trigger conditions, potential savings, and actions that it recommends taking. There is the option within Quantum to add these to a plan, and that's kind of recognizing that any scaling down of resource might have to go through some sort of change control unless it's an automated process that takes place. But I can add these to a plan and they will start to appear within my resource planner, which is only within Quantum, so it's not actually held within Azure or anywhere else, but it allows me to add some narrative to some of the decisions we've made around, for instance, virtual machines. So we can see this particular machine, we've reviewed this, we've said our action should read to shut it down, and the planned date would be September. This is just a demo site, so it is still running, but we can then mark up any actions or assign these to particular people who are responsible for those sorts of activities. So we've covered off the kind of key areas within here. I think the one area that I've kind of missed off is the ability for us to then provide alerts. So I mentioned that we can also do alerts based on parameters being met, or events, should I say, being triggered. And these can be based on multiple different elements. Predominantly what we're looking at here, though, are things like costs exceeding expected costs. So we'll have an anticipated tolerance level on a monthly basis for costs for either subsets of my data or my infrastructure or subscriptions or whatever it might be. We can apply an alert to this. We put in the sort of comparators, so if it's greater than, less than, and then we can add in specific values into this as well. We can then have these either presented within the Quantum toolset, so you'd have to physically access Quantum and review the alerts that are presented within the toolset, or I could have this sent to a shared mailbox, which could initiate a workflow on the back of the alert that is generated. And that is in a whistle-stop tour of Quantum for Azure. And on that note, I will open the floor to see if anybody has any questions. At this point, I don't think there are any. So I think Mel confirmed at the start that we would be sending out a recording of this demo and the presentation that she made earlier tomorrow or the day after, but it'll be after this presentation. But if you have any questions, I can't see any within the chat at this point. But if you have, great stuff. Okay, no, not any. We will be happy to respond to any questions you might have if you think of anything after the presentation itself. And again, if you have any requirements or want to find out a bit more detail around what Quantum, Azure, or even 365 is able to provide you, then please get back in touch. Thank you very much for your time.